My girlfriend Sarah's assistant, Mark, sent me a picture. It was a photo of Sarah and him, holding up a marriage certificate. They looked happy. Seeing that picture, I felt surprisingly calm. I broke up with Sarah right then. Mark called me, sounding really upset. He was almost crying, begging me not to be angry. He said it was just a joke, that the picture with Sarah wasn't real. He said Sarah was stressed out at work, and it was all his fault. He kept saying, "Please understand." Then Sarah got on the phone. She sounded different, not like the Sarah I knew. She said, "Sweetie, don't be mad. There's no need to explain anything to him." She sounded dismissive, like I wasn't important. Then she asked, "Where is he going to go if he leaves me?" I didn't answer. I just took the engagement ring I'd bought for her and threw it in the trash. Then, I picked up the acceptance letter I'd gotten from a university overseas. I booked a flight, turned off my phone, and started packing my bags quietly. Sarah didn't come home that night. The next morning, she stumbled in, smelling like alcohol. She saw me sitting on the couch and, in her usual bossy voice, ordered, "Make me some juice, I have a headache." I looked up at her but didn't say anything. I just kept packing. Sarah saw I wasn't responding and came closer, frowning. "Ben, are you ignoring me?" she asked. Then she noticed my packed suitcase. Her face got dark. "What's this? Are you actually planning to break up with me?" Without looking at her, I said calmly, "Breaking up isn't something to joke about." Maybe it was my calmness, but Sarah's eyes turned icy. She kicked my suitcase over and looked down at me. "Are you finished with this little tantrum?" I looked up at her, a small, mocking smile on my face. "A tantrum? You went and married someone else. Why would I listen to anything you have to say?" Sarah looked even more annoyed. "Haven't I already told you? It was just for fun. Mark has cancer. He wanted to make his parents happy before he died. You know he's been with me since we graduated. He's more than just an assistant. He's a friend. Why wouldn't I help him?" Her voice sounded like she thought she was better than me. She continued, "It's fine. Once he's gone, we can get a marriage license, too." I waved my hand, cutting off her ridiculous explanation. "Enough. You don't need to tell me anything. You have a husband now. Talk to him about it." Sarah's expression turned cold again. "In the end, you're just being mean and you don't trust me. If that's how it is, we shouldn't get married." Her voice was threatening, but I wasn't bothered. "All right," I said. Sarah was surprised. There was disbelief in her eyes. "You're serious?" I didn't answer. I just picked up my suitcase and started to leave. As I walked past Sarah, she suddenly grabbed my wrist. Her words were cold. "Think this through," she said. "Without me, you're nothing." I looked into her eyes. This person I'd loved for 7 years, now all I saw was coldness and disrespect. It hurt, I won't lie. I took a deep breath, smiled, and gently pulled her fingers off my wrist. "I wish you both happiness," I said. With that, I walked out, not looking back. Before I closed the door, I heard Sarah's angry voice behind me. "Ben, don't think you can come crawling back. Let's see how far you get without me." I stopped and turned around. It wasn't because I regretted anything or wanted her back. I just wanted to see the face of the girl I used to love so much, who now looked so ugly to me. Sarah stomped to the doorway, gave me a cold look, and slammed the door shut. It was loud enough to show how angry she was. At the entrance to the apartment building, I ran into Mark. I didn't need to ask. I knew he'd brought Sarah back. He was probably waiting for us to argue so he could play the caring friend. He rolled down his window, looked at my luggage, and smirked. "Oh, look, it's Ben. Sarah kicked you out, huh?" I gave him a cold look, ignoring him. But he blocked my way, grinning. "Good riddance," he said. "You're too boring for her anyway." I stopped, looked at his smug face, and laughed. "Yeah, I'm not a good match for her. Someone like you who lives off her is just perfect." His expression changed. You. I kicked him hard in the stomach and walked away without looking back. Trash doesn't deserve politeness. That night I found a hotel. Lying in bed, memories came flooding back. Sarah used to be my whole world. Unfortunately, she was like a princess, always wanting to be in charge, and I was just an ordinary guy who liked to read. We met in college, though we didn't really talk much. Like all the other guys who liked her, I just watched her from a distance. I followed her to class, out of class, to meals. In the end, I even changed my major just to be near her. I've never regretted that decision, because that's what brought us closer. Sarah picked me for a project because I had good grades. I remember being so nervous that I stuttered, finally blurting out, "I do!" Sarah laughed, her eyes crinkling. "Sounds like you're saying wedding vows," she said. Everyone teased me. I looked down, embarrassed, but happy she didn't mind. She even helped me out. "Don't tease him," she said. "Ben's so smart. I'm the lucky one to be working with him." After that, our relationship grew. When I told her how I felt, she agreed to be my girlfriend right away. We spent our college years as the couple everyone admired. I had excellent grades and got offers from big companies as soon as I graduated, even a scholarship to study overseas. But I turned them all down for Sarah. I started working at her family's company, starting at the bottom. She also fought with her family to be with me, fighting for a place for us, even under her family's pressure. Sometimes I still can't understand why Sarah and I ended up like this. I mean, we both had the same goal, to give each other a stable future. But ever since Mark came along, everything changed. He's younger than me, more lively, and better at making people happy. At some point, our conversations changed. Instead of sharing everything with each other, she started talking about little things with Mark first. I was angry and jealous. But after a few arguments with Sarah, seeing her look at me differently and hearing her say I was overreacting, I understood. Her heart wasn't with me anymore. It's not really Mark's presence that bothers me. It's Sarah's careless attitude that hurts. No matter what reason I gave to try to hold on to her, as soon as Mark said something, she'd rush to him. She gave all her feelings for me to him. After 7 years, all she had for me was coldness and complaints. Still, I proposed to her. I thought maybe once we got married she'd change. But seeing that marriage certificate with her name and another man's name was the last straw. Looking out at the city lights at night, I suddenly felt peaceful. They say there's a 7-year itch in relationships, where things just get stale. Maybe this is where Sarah and I are supposed to end. The next morning, I went to the company to quit my job. Honestly, it was just for show. My authority had been taken away a long time ago. They didn't even question my resignation. They just approved it. Afterwards, the HR person called, pretending to be concerned. "Too bad, Ben. We were looking forward to your wedding with Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I just smiled, not bothered. "Don't worry, you'll get your invitation soon," I replied. Before I even left the building, Sarah called. "Ben, enough is enough. I rejected your resignation. You better stop this, or you won't get a penny, and I'll kick you out." I chuckled coldly. 7 years together. Did she really think I was there for money? That money could control me? "Do whatever you want. I don't care," I replied, and I blocked her number. Silence was wonderful. I submitted my resignation again, and Sarah approved it without hesitation. Once I got my paperwork, I left without looking back. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time, without worrying about Sarah, the company, or anything else. Early the next morning, a loud ringing woke me up. "Ben, what's your problem? The project signing is today. You better be there," Sarah yelled over the phone. I shook my head, waking up fully. Holding back my annoyance, I moved the phone away and waited for her to finish. Then I said slowly, "Miss Lewis, you must have forgotten. I quit yesterday, and you agreed. So, what does your project have to do with me?" "Ben!" she snapped, her voice full of anger. I'm warning you, don't make me use the law. Your resignation might have been accepted, but we haven't finished the handover. I can sue you if you don't show up." I wasn't going to play her game. I replied coldly, "Don't try to threaten me. If you'd read my resignation properly, you wouldn't be wasting your time talking to me." With that, I hung up. I didn't expect to run into Sarah so soon. After I quit, several companies reached out, offering me jobs. One came from a company's boss, inviting me to dinner. I couldn't refuse, so I went. The boss was generous, booking a fancy hotel. But as soon as I arrived, I saw familiar faces from my old company filling the lobby. I realized the hotel was owned by my previous company, and Sarah's project was probably there. As I hesitated, Mark appeared out of nowhere, blocking my way. "Isn't that the loser?" he sneered, challenging me. "What, got cold feet now?" I shot him a cold glance, smirkings. "I guess I didn't beat you up enough last time. Coming back for more?" Mark's face fell. He backed up a bit, looking embarrassed. "Ben, don't think you're all that," he barked. "Sarah's my wife now. You're just a useless failure." I ignored him, pushed past, and entered the hotel. Mark was yelling about calling security, causing a scene. People were staring. I waved casually, acknowledging them, then went upstairs. The boss had reserved a room on the second floor, but someone clearly didn't want me to leave easily. "Ben, stop right there!" Sarah stormed up in her high heels, looking me over with disgust. "On a day like this, you show up dressed like that? Even if you don't care about being embarrassed, I do." She told her assistant to take me to get a makeover, but I shrugged them off, amused. "Sarah, how many times do I have to tell you? Quit it. We have no connection anymore. I'm here for a meeting, not your little game. What I wear is none of your business." Sarah was surprised, almost instinctively mocking. "Meeting someone here? As if you're just an unwanted son-in-law. I really didn't belong here." I didn't bother explaining. I turned around and headed upstairs. But right then, another voice stopped me. "Hey, Ben, long time no see." I turned around, and a chubby, middle-aged man was walking towards me, smiling. It was Mr. Jones, the president of Alpha Group and one of today's main figures. The project Sarah mentioned was this collaboration with Alpha Group. "Mr. Jones, long time no see," I said. I walked over, and after a brief chat, Mr. Jones suddenly turned and looked at Sarah. "I trust Ben completely," he said. "I can sign the project contract today, but I have one condition. Ben must be in charge of our projects moving forward." Hearing this, even Sarah froze in disbelief. Mr. Jones extended his hand to shake mine. Quickly, I said, "Mr. Jones, that's not right. I was about to say that I had already resigned, but Sarah pulled me back with a sly smile aimed at Mr. Jones. "No problem, Mr. Jones. We can definitely do that." She grabbed my arm tightly. "Ben, you better cooperate with me," she whispered, with a no-nonsense warning in her voice. I gave a snort of laughter and shook off her hand. With Mr. Jones and everyone else looking on in confusion, I spoke up, loud and clear. "I'm sorry, but I won't be participating in or collaborating on this project. I submitted my resignation yesterday, and in the future, I have no ties with Sarah's company, and Miss Sarah has already registered her marriage with her assistant, which means she'll have nothing to do with me from now on." I gave Mr. Jones an apologetic smile. "Sorry, Mr. Jones. Looks like I won't be able to work with you anymore." Sarah stood there in shock, not expecting me to draw such a hard line. Mr. Jones's expression turned slightly serious. "Sarah, is what he's saying true?" Sarah seemed at a loss, and Mark hurried over, all flattering. "Mr. Jones, don't worry about it. This guy's just a freeloader. What you're interested in is Alpha Group's strength. I'll take full charge of the project now." Mr. Jones looked at him, then at Sarah. His eyes were filled with disdain and amusement. "A pretty boy trying to negotiate with me? Sarah, your sense of humor is really something." Mr. Jones let his team out, but before leaving, he took my hand and said if I ever needed a job, to consider them first. I nodded and agreed, smiling. Once Mr. Jones's group left, Sarah couldn't hold back and came rushing over, ready to slap me. "Ben, you jerk! Do you know how much you've cost the company with your little stunt?" I grabbed her wrist and pushed her away coldly. Sarah, being pampered all her life, had never been treated like this. She looked at me with anger and disappointment. I spoke calmly. "I've told you, I've resigned. I have nothing to do with you or your company. Everything that happened today is due to your own blind arrogance. It's none of my business." After that, I turned and headed upstairs, avoiding any more trouble with them. In the private room, I was getting along great with the person in charge. But considering future collaborations with Alpha Group, which would inevitably involve Sarah again, I declined the boss's enthusiastic invitation. As the evening ended, I was at the door, seeing the boss off. However, looking back, I noticed Sarah still sitting in the corner of the lobby. Mark was squatting by her side, seemingly arguing about something. I wasn't interested and was about to leave when Sarah suddenly spotted me. "Ben, wait a second." She hurried over, grabbing my sleeve with a pouty face. "Ben, please don't be mad. Come home with me, okay? Didn't we promise to get married?" Mark followed, looking uneasy, his face going pale. "Sarah, I feel terrible. Can you take me to the hospital?" There was a flicker of conflict in Sarah's eyes, but she steeled herself and ignored him, looking at me with hope. "Stop this. I know I was wrong. There was nothing between me and Mark. It was just a joke." Mark looked shocked, disbelief written all over his face. I sighed. "Why, Sarah, you've got a husband now. Watch what you say." But Sarah acted like she didn't hear, clutching my hand and going on and on about the past. I suddenly felt fed up and shook off her grip. "Just because you're shameless doesn't mean I have to be too. Sarah, you're the one who got registered with someone else. I let you be, but now you're pointlessly dragging me into this mess. What do you want? Not everyone has to live according to your whims." My cold demeanor made Sarah realize I wasn't joking. Panic flashed in her eyes. She quickly said, "No, Ben, I've always loved you. If you want, I'll divorce Mark immediately." Her voice choked with emotion, eyes red with tears, made her look strange to me. I stared at her blankly, feeling nothing. Once upon a time, even a slight frown from her would worry me for days. Now, her actions only annoyed me. She's not heartbroken over losing me, but over losing a servant to boss around. "Enough, Sarah, stop bothering me. If you really care, look at your poor new husband." She remained unresponsive, just hung her head, sobbing about it not being true over and over. "My only husband is you. It can only be you. I know I was wrong from now on. I've lost interest in listening. If she'd said that earlier, I might have risked everything for her. Now it's just irritating." I shrugged off her hand coldly. "Save it. Think about how to deal with today's breach of contract. Such a big project, the delay will definitely hit the company hard." Sarah naturally understood. While she hesitated, I turned and strode away. But I underestimated Sarah's persistence. It wasn't long before she found out where I was living and was waiting at the entrance. I was going to ignore her, but as soon as she saw me, she ran right over, trying to hug me. I coldly sidestepped. "Miss Lewis, why are you here again?" I was getting a bit impatient. Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting mine, speaking sincerely. "I thought about it. My dad's handling things at the company, so I don't need to worry, but you're the most important person to me." I didn't say anything, or maybe it was that I didn't know what to say. She thought I was agreeing with her and cautiously leaned closer, trying to hold my hand. "Ben, I twisted my ankle trying to find you," I sneered, looking at the figure behind her. "If you twisted your ankle, you should see a doctor or go complain to your real husband, not me." Hearing my words, Sarah's expression nearly cracked. She turned and saw Mark looking hurt, not far behind her. She shouted in frustration, "I told you to stop clinging to me, aren't you done yet?" Then she turned back to me, softness in her eyes. "Ben, I'm planning to divorce him. I've really realized my mistake. Can't you feel how much I love you?" I took a good look at her. Her love. Was it even love for me? I didn't think so. As the eldest daughter of the Lewis family, she's used to being the center of attention. She can't handle my constant rejections, especially since I used to be her plaything. She was trying to conquer me, but if she succeeded, I'd end up like Mark, something tasteless to her. "Your husband is still here. Shouldn't you be comforting him? After all, you guys have a marriage certificate," I said with a sarcastic smile. Mark had already moved to stand behind Sarah. Upon hearing my words, he embraced her from behind. "Sarah, come on. Let's go home, okay?" Sarah tried to struggle. I coldly added, "Sarah, stop bothering me. You made your choice. Now deal with the consequences. From now on, I don't want to see you." Maybe my words hurt her pride, because her face shifted from hurt to anger. She turned back to Mark and shot me a dark, disdainful look. "Ben, if you don't appreciate my kindness, don't blame me when you come begging." I just laughed and shook my head, completely uninterested. News about the breach of contract at Sarah's company had spread, especially her affair with her assistant. It became public gossip. Inevitably, as her ex, I got dragged into it too. My phone blew up with calls from tabloid reporters. I had no choice but to go to the phone company and cancel my number to get some peace. But just a few days later, Sarah returned, bringing her family's bodyguards to corner me at my apartment entrance. She even threatened that if I didn't go with her, she wouldn't let me leave the building. Reluctant to cause trouble for the neighbors, I frowningly got in the car with her. "Sarah, are you done causing a scene?" I asked, despite a flash of annoyance. Sarah's expression quickly turned calm. "Ben, I'm here because of my father. He's in the hospital and wants to see you." Her tone wasn't arrogant like that night, but rather pleading. I shrugged it off and leaned back in the car, closing my eyes to rest. When we reached the hospital's premium room, I saw Sarah's father. Once a commanding man, he now lay pale and lonely in the hospital bed. "Dad," Sarah called softly. "I brought Ben." Sarah's father opened his eyes, his gaze sharp, exuding an intense sense of authority, even in such a state. I marveled at how even Sarah, so domineering with me, was now submissive, fiddling nervously with her clothes. It was her little nervous habit. In the past, I might have comforted her, but times change. I didn't need to play along anymore, so I casually sat on the sofa and crossed my legs, smirking. "What's the matter?" Sarah's father's gaze froze for a moment. Then he spoke flatly. "You should know that the company's stocks have plummeted." I chuckled, but said nothing. His expression darkened. "I called you here to discuss marrying Sarah soon. That way we can go ahead with the deal with Mr. Jones. It benefits both of us." He sounded weak due to his condition, but his disdainful, commanding tone was clear. Ever since he found out I was dating Sarah, he did all he could to stop it. He thought that, as a poor guy from the countryside, I was after Sarah's family's wealth. To this day, he still thinks the same. I laughed, now understanding their game. Failing to mend bridges with Mr. Jones after offending him, they'd turned to me. Once they learned of Mr. Jones's favorable opinion of me, I'd been a pawn to them all along, with no rights of my own. I've arranged for her to divorce Mark. As long as you agree, you can marry my daughter right away." Sarah looked at me with teary eyes, hoping I'd nod in agreement. I looked her straight in the eye, speaking slowly and clearly. "Sorry, I don't want anyone's leftovers." As soon as I finished, Sarah's father's face darkened, and he slapped her hard. "Shameless thing! stirring up such a mess for a pretty boy and always making a fuss with me. Don't you see your worth?" Ignoring his underlying insults, I just smiled, not bothering to respond. Sarah held her reddened cheek, staring at me, clearly hoping I'd say something. I stayed silent, just observing coldly. Then I snorted, got up, and left. Feeling his pride wounded, Sarah's father could no longer maintain the pretense, leaping from bed and hurling insults at my back as I left. I ignored him entirely, treating it like a dog barking. I just didn't expect Sarah to leave her dad and chase after me. "What's up?" I asked, feeling pretty impatient. Sarah was choking back tears. "Ben, I divorced Mark. There's nothing stopping us now. Won't you marry me?" I didn't say a word, just stared at her coldly. My meaning was clear. Sarah started crying, shaking her head. "No way. You didn't used to be like this. Is there really no chance for us? You know I love you." "But I don't love you anymore," I cut her off. "I don't believe you." Sarah got more emotional. "I don't believe you, Ben. You used to love me so much. Did you forget?" She was yelling at me hysterically. It was hard to believe this was once the cool and composed CEO. I gave a smirk, a look at her without any feeling. "You said it yourself. That was before. The Sarah I loved is gone." My words hit Sarah like a thunderclap. She shook her head furiously, still trying to make a case, but I was out of patience. I didn't want this back and forth or to hear any apologies. I pushed her away and walked off. She collapsed, crying hard. After that day, we cut all ties, though the buzz about Sarah's company going down made headlines. To pay off a huge penalty to Mr. Jones, she tried to cut costs by downsizing. The whole company was in a state of panic, and the bad news just flooded the media. If her family didn't have such strong roots, it could have been a total disaster. But I didn't feel much about it. Sarah got herself into this mess. Meanwhile, Mr. Jones reached out to me again with a solid offer. I was tempted, but knowing I'd have to deal with the Lewis family, I turned it down. I contacted my college mentor, asked about studying abroad. He was really pleased, since he was pretty disappointed when I gave up a big opportunity for Sarah. Seeing me get back on track now, he was very supportive. "Ben, you're young. It's time to work hard," he said. After retaking exams a few times, I got accepted into a famous school abroad. To celebrate, my mentor organized a reunion with old classmates. I ran into Sarah again. In just a few months, she was almost unrecognizable. Sarah broke the awkward silence. "Hey, long time no see, Ben." She gave a smile, but it seemed a little forced. I nodded, didn't say much. Her eyes dimmed. "I must look terrible now, right?" "Not too bad, just a bit tired," I answered honestly. Her eyes welled up again, colors of hurt and longing in her voice. "Ben, I thought I'd never see you again." She stepped close, almost touching me. I frowned and stepped back. "Talking is fine. Standing so close, people might get the wrong idea." My action and words startled Sarah. Her eyes were full of sorrow. I got annoyed. Who was she putting on this show for? "If there's nothing else, let's go inside. The professor is waiting." I tossed these words over my shoulder and brushed past her. When people heard I got into a top school abroad, they raised their glasses to me. After a few rounds, I was getting buzzed. My mentor, not much of a drinker, left early. I understood he was giving us space. With him gone, folks loosened up more, chatting and drinking, different topics. Someone brought me into the conversation. I answered all the questions. Then, the unavoidable topic of me and Sarah came up. In college, we were the golden couple. I frowned, picked up my drink, then spoke once everyone was looking. "Sarah's a rich girl, not someone I can match. Thanks to our past, I've become a better person." Then I downed my drink. People sensed it was a tense subject, so the conversation shifted. Still, some wouldn't let it go, pushing for Sarah and me to play couple games. Seeing me set down my drink, refusing to partake, Sarah tried to help me out. Yet the others kept pressing. Sarah sighed, sitting next to me. Almost instinctively, I stood up. Sarah seemed tipsy, stumbled, and grabbed me. Folks shouted, "Kiss! Kiss!" A gleam flickered in Sarah's eyes. She actually leaned in for a kiss. I lost it. I shoved her away. "You've had enough." My sudden outburst froze the crowd. The room grew tense. I ignored it, stared Sarah down. "You know full well why people are joking around. Are you seriously unclear about our situation?" Sarah bit her lip, looking pitiful. "I had no pity," I said louder. "We broke up because she married someone else." The crowd buzzed with chatter. I didn't bother sticking around, just said I was drunk and left. Sarah wouldn't let up, chasing after me. I couldn't believe how clingy she'd gotten. I missed her cool demeanor. I stopped, turned, gave her a cold stare. "Are you done? With a husband and everything now, isn't this beneath you?" Sarah stopped, tears flowing. "I know you're leaving. I just wanted to see you a bit more." My heart didn't stir. When we were together, she didn't treasure it. Now she's acting all lovey-dovey. For whom? Besides, I saw the photos Mark sent a month ago. They had patched things up. So why was Sarah bothering with me? "You have someone, a spouse? Shouldn't you stick by that?" She shook her head, all riled up. "No way! It's completely over between him and me." She frantically explained. "That's when I found out from the very start Mark faked his illness. He was never sick. He just wanted Sarah's sympathy to steal her away from me." Watching her tears streaming down her face, her whole body trembling, I felt no sympathy. Yeah, Mark is a jerk, but all his excessive behaviors couldn't have happened without Sarah's consent. So rather than saying Mark deceived her, it's more like she willingly let him deceive her. But now everything's said and done. Why bother arguing about who's right or wrong? "Sarah, let me go and let yourself go too. Wouldn't it be better to end things gracefully?" The next time I saw Sarah was the day I boarded my flight. She was wearing a mask, walking behind me, thinking I didn't know. I just played along, headed into the lounge. She sat right behind me. I pretended not to notice, wearing headphones, quietly waiting. Before leaving, I got a call that totally surprised me. It was from Sarah's dad. His tone had turned extremely polite, full of flattery. "Ben, come back. I apologize. Can you give my daughter another chance? I know I wronged you back then, wronged you both. But now I've seen your capabilities, how you've cared for her. Now that you're gone, she's been miserable every day. As her father, it's heartbreaking. So I'm begging you for old time's sake, give my daughter one more chance." I got up and looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah, I won't repeat myself, so listen up. From now on, I am a stranger to you and to your family." I walked to the boarding gate, glanced back casually. Sarah was sobbing, collapsed on the floor. I didn't look back. Didn't turn around. Not until I was on the plane, looking out at the blue skies and white clouds, did my thoughts finally come. I deleted all the contacts related to Sarah. After the plane landed, staring at the completely unfamiliar surroundings, a tinge of unease crept in, but it was quickly replaced by excitement. "Ben?" A young, vibrant girl ran up to me, holding a sign. "I'm Ashley. I'm here to pick you up." I reached out my hand with a smile. "Hi, Ashley." In the days abroad, I threw myself back into my studies. Those messy thoughts in my heart slowly faded away amidst the busy coursework. When I'd almost forgotten the name Sarah one late night, I received a call from across the ocean. "Is this Ben?" "Yes, it is." "I'm Sarah's lawyer. She passed away at 3:10 p.m. Beijing time. Before she died, she entrusted me to pass on a message to you." Before I could respond, Ashley, who had just finished her shower, came over, towel drying her hair. "Honey, who's calling so late?" I smiled, gave her a reassuring look. "Don't worry, it's no one important." With that, I didn't give the caller a chance to speak. "Drop dead. I don't want to hear it." And I hung up decisively. Ashley snuggled into my arms, her eyes filled with affection. "Honey, let's visit my parents tomorrow. They want to meet you." I smiled and gently tapped her nose. "Sure,